my name is Malia Chadwick, and I am going to be doing my original oratory on bullying. The way we are taught to perceive the act of bullying is misguided, and it is time that we start addressing the issue so that we can mitigate the continuation of this behavior. Sometimes we think that bullying is something that stops when we cross the stage and we accept our diploma. But that's wrong. And it doesn't start there either. Some people experience their first bullies long before they're ever enrolled in school. Some meet their first bully on the school bus. Other kids, it's in the hallway. Sometimes they don't meet their first bully until they're sitting in the break room at work. Or maybe it's in line at the coffee shop. The issue is bullying starts, and if it's not addressed, it may never stop. One out of 5 children reported being bullied, according to the National Center for Educational Statistics. 1 out of 5 in 2019. According to the CDC, depression, anxiety, difficulty sleeping, lower academic achievement, those are all side effects of bullying, as one might imagine. Now think about that as an adult. You have this coworker and they just treat you like crap. It just seems like they're out to get you. You don't want to go to work. You might call in sick if you're already having a bad day. That's loss of money. You might go to your boss and try to resolve it, but does it really get resolved? What do you do? How do you approach an adult bully? It's something that we have to think about, and it's something that most of us have encountered in our adult lives. I remember the first time I encountered bullying was in 4th grade. I wasn't being bullied, but our principal crossed the stage at the school assembly in this bright orange shirt that said, "Be a buddy, not a bully." B, with double E's. I was kind of insulted. I mean, I might have been more receptive if they hadn't spelled B with 2 E's. We all kind of murmured to ourselves, trying to figure out who was the bully, who was the reason for this assembly. We were a small school, maybe 60 kids in total. Which one of us was the bully? We couldn't figure it out. So we started to make fun of the principal, as kids do, right? Bullying became more apparent when I was in middle school. And it's hard to talk about this, but it needs to be talked about. Again, I wasn't being bullied. And I wasn't bullying. But I sat there, and I was a witness. There were these 2 siblings, and they rode our bus. When they weren't on the bus, it was a 40-minute bus ride. When they did ride the bus, it was an hour long. And that 20 minutes seemed to make a difference for everybody that rode that bus. It was the biggest inconvenience we had ever experienced. So much so that we made it their problem. These 2 kids were young. Probably not even double digits, like 6, 7 years old. And I can only imagine that what they experienced was a nightmare. Those kids were bullied day after day after day. It was very evident that nobody wanted them on that bus. And to add to it, the bus driver never intervened. In fact, he seemed to throw fuel on the fire when he too openly complained about having to drive 20 minutes out of the way. I remember the day that those two students stopped riding our bus. At first we're like, oh, maybe they just missed the bus. And then they didn't ride the bus for a week. And then it was a couple weeks, and we felt pretty confident that they weren't coming back. Maybe, just maybe, we had scared them away. Again, I didn't actively participate, but I sat there silently, and I didn't say anything. I allowed it to unfold. I allowed these two children to be beaten by words. And then they weren't there. Everybody celebrated. The whole bus erupted with excitement that we no longer had to go out of our way. Because, oh my goodness, in elementary school, middle school, 20 minutes is just that much of an inconvenience. As an adult, I stumbled across the article. Those two children died in a plane crash, and that's why they were no longer on our bus. It was really devastating for me to learn that, and reasonably so. I can't even explain the emotion that I feel every time that I think about it. Those two children died with the perception that there was an entire school bus of children that hated them. No amount of intervention could have changed their tragic fate. However, I do believe that it could have changed the way that they felt about themselves. I don't know if anybody else on my bus knows that that's what happened. It's a burden that I've been left to carry. We hear these heartwarming stories of people that bullied individuals, and they recognized that they had done wrong, and they reached out and apologized, and the person on the other end was receptive and they forgave them. That's not an option here. That's not an option. And it shouldn't be an option, because it should have never happened in the first place. There should have been intervention. Somebody should have stopped it. Somebody should have said, hey, these kids didn't choose to live there. It is out of their control. What are we doing? As an adult, I've encountered my own bullies. And though I've enjoyed it because I particularly enjoy confrontation, I know that's not the same for everyone. And it had me thinking, how is it that people make it through elementary school, middle school, high school, college, and into the adult life still feeling empowered to be a bully? I think it's in the approach. I think it is how we approach bullying. Think about it. When we're in school, what happens to the school bully? What happens when you tattletale and, the bully gets detention, they get suspension? And what is that? What does that mean? That means that individual is being isolated. They are being removed from the situation, but the situation in itself is rarely addressed. Instead, it's more so pushed off. And it's pushed off while they're in elementary school. Oh, give them a timeout, a detention. It's pushed off while they're in middle school, in school suspension, or out of school suspension. Sure, why not? Might as well send them home. Maybe they'll eat ice cream and play video games. When they're in high school, again, just push it off. And then when they're an adult, there's nobody to give them suspension. There's nobody to say, hey, what you're doing is wrong. No. And that's what's wrong with the approach. It's not addressing the root issue. The root issue is that there is something lying beneath the surface. That when you act to suspend, to isolate, to pull them away from the community, you are failing to neglect the fact that there is something that caused that issue in the first place. When you suspend a child, they are being sent potentially to the very reason that they are a bully. It might be their parents. They might be experiencing devastating abuse in their household, and the only way to express that they are in immense pain is to cause pain to other children. We have to consider the idea that maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's depression, maybe it is simply that this individual is getting a lack of attention. And doesn't isolation, suspension, punishment, doesn't that seem counterintuitive? We are not addressing the issue. And as a result, the issue continues to grow. And it grows from a 10-year-old to a 20-year-old to a 50-year-old, and even to that grumpy old man sitting in his rocking chair yelling at the kids riding by on their bikes. Unless roots are pulled, often things will continue to grow. And that is why I believe that we need to change our perspective, change our approach to bullying.